Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Mr. Mayor, good to see you.
It's been too long, Piers. I'm just only sorry we're not doing this in person, but it's lovely to be with you again. Although the first time on your new show. Well, it's not new anymore, is it?
Well, it's not new, and you have resisted my advances for quite some time. So what's made you finally succumb?
Well, I think, to be fair, we were trying to hook something up a few weeks ago, but you were very busy doing stuff overseas, and I'm just really sorry it's taken so long. Hopefully next time it'll be in person.
Well, I would like that. We've always, I think, had a robust exchange of views over the years. Let's start with the obvious subject, which is your campaign about air quality in London. I want to preface this part of the interview by saying that I have gone through a quite interesting journey, I think, about pollution in London. So I thought I had a big issue with hay fever for quite a few years, and eventually had a lot of tests done, revealed no allergies at all. And then had a local chemist who said to me, I think it may be pollution. Is it worse when you come back from overseas? I went, actually, yes, it is. And it was knocking me out for like half a day every week. And he recommended getting some air purifiers and getting an air quality app and not going out too much when it was very high. I did both those things. I've got 4 purifiers in my house now, £80 each. And it's completely transformed my health. I'm a different human being in the last 8 months to what I'd been like in the previous few years. I then did some digging into the borough I live in, Kensington and Chelsea, and discovered, to my horror, that it's one of the worst places in the country for air pollution, and that there's a lot of people who die from pollution-related deaths in Kensington and Chelsea. So I'm a convert to your cause. I believe it is a real issue. I've been through an experience myself that's made me see the benefit of having better quality air, albeit through purifiers. But here's the problem that I think you've encountered. It's a similar problem to the Just Stop Oil protests, where I agree with their cause, but I don't agree with the methodology. And it seems to me that your ULEZ scheme, albeit well-intentioned, and I think we all want to get to where you want to get to on air quality, but it's turned out to be incredibly divisive. You know this. Very polarising. The polls actually show it's pretty split down the middle about what people's views are. Perhaps if you live in the outer part of London, more extremely against it than those who live in the inner part of the city. But it is very divisive and it is very controversial. Do you have any regrets about the methodology?
Well, Piers, can I first thank you for the thoughtful way you've asked the question, because I, like you, went on a journey. In 2014, 2015, I had no idea about what you've discovered either. I was feeling out of breath. When I was playing football, I was getting tired very quickly. I had some really bad days where I was wheezing and coughing, and I'm, like you, reasonably well informed. I think I know a bit about things like air pollution, air quality, climate change, but I had no idea that this invisible thing we can't see, particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide, was making us sick. And so the evidence in relation to the consequences of air pollution, you and I are living out, but also in our city, around 4,000 people die prematurely because of air pollution across our country, according to government figures, not mine, government figures, between 28,000 and 36,000, and at least to children having stunted lungs forever, and adults like you and I with a whole host of health issues from asthma to cancer, dementia to heart disease. But also, Piers, to answer your question directly, I've seen the evidence of the ULEZ in central London where it exists and in London where it exists. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So we introduced the ULEZ in central London and saw within a year an almost 50% reduction in toxicity, but also a third fewer children with air pollution related illnesses being rushed to hospital, a third reduction. We expanded it to inner London and we saw a further 20% reduction in air pollution, and children going to 1,400 schools were breathing cleaner air. But let me show you the problem. It's in outer London that's the worst air. The 10 boroughs with the largest amount of premature deaths are in outer London. What we've also seen is that 24 of the 30 GPs with the worst number of patients is in outer London. So that's the aim. But what I've tried to do also, Piers, is to listen to the genuine concerns. And I recognise, by the way, Piers, in relation to regret, over a number of years in outer London, we haven't got the good quality public transport we've got in central London, and inner London. So more people are relying on cars in outer London. The good news, 9 out of 10 cars now driving in outer London are already compliant, won't pay a penny more, but we'll see the benefits of clean air.
And my final point is... I don't want to get into arguing about the merits of what you're trying to do, because I actually broadly agree with it. On the methodology, it seems to me, here's your problem in a nutshell. I have an Aston Martin, right? A very luxurious car. I'm very lucky to have it, lucky to earn enough money to be able to keep it up. And you don't charge me a penny to drive that around London as much as I like, because I'm ULEZ compatible. But if I lived in North London, in Wembley or somewhere, and I was a hard-working guy, woman, and you're driving a van maybe for work and you have to come into town every day, and you're already facing massive cost of living, extra costs for your family, you're struggling to feed your family, you're really feeling the pinch. And now suddenly you, who really can't afford just to get through the day as it is, are suddenly having to pay another £12.50 every day to you. Why am I being spared just because I can afford to have a more expensive ULEZ compatible car? And why are a large number of people who are having to pay actually at the poorer end of the spectrum of London society? That is where your optics, I think, are failing.
So because your car is ULEZ compliant, it means it's Euro 4 or better. What that means, Piers, is when you drive your car, your wife may be next to your daughter in the back, they're not breathing in poison the same way somebody driving a non-compliant car is. That's the first point. The second point is what we're doing is to support the hard-working van driver you talked about, to support the low-income family you're talking about, to support the charity with the minibus you may be talking about. We're giving financial support to the tune of £160 million. So a small van owner, a small business with a van like yours, will now receive support, £7,000 to get a ULEZ compliant van. You don't need to, by the way, buy an electric van. If you've got a car, you don't need to buy an Aston Martin. And the good news is there are ULEZ compliant cars, vans and minibuses available. And so the scrappage support we're given, without a penny of support from the government, who are giving support to cities around the country with their clean air zones, means that person you're talking about, who I understand will be anxious, will have the support to make the transition.
Well,
here's the point.
Yeah, I've heard
they breathe clean air.
OK, but I've heard all the phone-ins, and a lot of them are furious. They're not just concerned about this. They are furious at what they see as a punitive tax on the poorer people in the city. And also, why are they being picked on as how they see it? And my argument again about the Just Stop Oil campaign, you've got to bring people with you. At the moment, you've got half of your city, and you're the mayor of the whole city, you've got half of the city up in arms about this. They're attacking the ULEZ machinery in the streets, which I don't support. They shouldn't be doing that. There's a lot of blind rage about this. I've heard the phone-ins on the radio. What are you going to do about this growing anger? Because you may be right in your cause. I believe you're right about trying to get better air quality. But you know that the Labour Party are very concerned about it. I want to play you a little mashup of what Labour figures have been saying about it.
I don't think there's any doubt that ULEZ was the reason that we lost the by-election in Uxbridge. And I have said we should reflect on this, including the mayor. I've spoken to him, as you would expect, and so there will be that reflection.
The cost is a problem. And if you look at who pays ULEZ, it tends to be poorer families and smaller businesses. I'm afraid that the hard truth is a £12 an hour, £12 a day fee costs Labour that by-election.
There is a massive cost of living crisis at the moment, and asking people to shell out thousands to buy a new vehicle or pay £12.50 every day to go on the road is just an expense too many.
Now, these aren't Tories saying this. This is your own side. They think that this is an election liability. How would you feel if you go down this path, you dig your heels in as you're doing, you keep going, but it ends up potentially becoming an election deciding issue in the next year or so, whenever that general election may come, that the Tories use this as a weapon to actually defeat you? Then Labour doesn't win power to do all the other things it wants to do, not least of which, including the environment.
Well, let me respond, if I may, please, Piers, to the various points you've made and deal with each of them. So the first point I'd make is you very generously and rightly said that in central London, people support ULEZ and in inner London, but there's some concern in outer London. I would argue the reason why people in central London and inner London support the policies because they've seen it bedded in and they realise it's not as bad as they feared it was going to be. I'll give you some breaking news. When I announced the central London policy, people were against that as well initially until we had a scrappage scheme and they saw the benefits were far better than the disbenefits. And the point I make is this, when I began that journey, Piers, only 44% of cars in the whole of London were compliant. So the majority would have been losers. Now that figure in inner London is 97% are compliant. In outer London, on an average day, 9 out of 10 are compliant. That's the first point I would make with respect. The second point I would make is in outer London, there's been a lot of misinformation, but also some genuine anxiety because people think they'll be caught when in fact they won't be caught. And so the really good news is, on an average day in outer London, 9 out of 10 cars seen driving are already compliant. They don't pay a penny more, but see the benefits. And because I've been listening, you played, I can't see, but you played, Keir, Wes and other colleagues in the Labour Party. Because I've been listening, not just to them, but to Londoners who want to see better public transport, 4 million kilometres of new buses in outer London, a new Superloop bus in outer London, Elizabeth Line extended to east and west of London, the DLR now extended, but also a scrappage scheme, so every single Londoner, car owner, motorcycle owner, van owner, minibus owner who may be affected now gets support.
But they're saying they're not getting enough support. And my other question to you about that would be, why, if the government has helped out other cities up and down the country, why have they not helped you out?
Well, I think this goes to the core of the anger you're talking about, which is basically the government thinks, because of Uxbridge and Ruislip, that actually tackling climate change and tackling air pollution are vote losers. And so they've weaponised this as an issue. And so they're giving people the impression around the country that there's a ULEZ coming too. But I'm quite clear, what's right for London may not be right for Luton. What's right for Bermondsey may not be right for Burnley. And so what the government is doing is weaponise this as an issue. And what I'm keen to do is to listen to the concerns people have, and they're genuine concerns, many of them, and try and address them. But I say again, this was a difficult decision, but I think it's a vital one and the right one.
But are you likely, in view of the pretty extreme reaction from half of your people in London, are you likely to evolve this policy and reflect their concerns?
Yeah, we will always listen to Londoners. So I'll give you just 3 examples. In January, when I announced the policy, it was because I listened to the consultation. People were saying, I'm a low-income family, I got a small business, employ less than 10 people, I'm a charity, I'm disabled. So we gave support in January to those people. In July, I expanded the support to every single family in London receiving what's called child benefit. That's about 800,000 people. But you're right, there was still concern, which is why the first week of August, I said every single person in London, it doesn't matter how much you earn, you will get support in relation to the scrappage scheme. And the reason why the government's not giving London support, they're giving Birmingham support and Bristol support and Bath support, is they think by attacking Londoners, they may do better at the general election. So Londoners are pawns caught in this crossfire. What I'd say to the government is, grow up, work with me to support Londoners, whether you're a family, whether you're a charity, whether you're a business. Nobody wins if people are dying prematurely. Nobody wins if kids have stunted lungs.
True, but nobody wins if half of the people in London hate you because they think you're targeting the poorer members of society over people like me.
I've got to be frank, Piers. You asked the question at the top of this interview, which was, why am I on this show? I've got to be honest. One of the reasons I'm on this show is because I recognise many of my voters, watch this show, and I'm keen to talk to them through you, Piers. And you ask me the tough questions that they ask me, and I respond to as well, because I genuinely think that once people see the benefits of this policy, they'll come with me, as they did in central London, as they did in inner London. But also, Piers, I spent time on Great Ormond Street speaking to kids with stunted lungs. I've met the doctors treating kids at the Children's Evelina Hospital. I've met a bereaved mum. I myself, listen, when I have an asthma attack, I know what to do. I take my pump, I take my tablets, I'm in control. Imagine being a kid with an illness that's preventable by tackling air pollution. Air pollution is not inevitable. It's preventable.
Listen, like I said at the start, I'm with you about the problem of air pollution. I've seen it myself. I've seen it to my own health. So I'm with you on that. I just think that you've got to understand, I think, the scale of concern. I think you probably do. You've been mayor a long time. I think you understand a lot of people are very angry about this, and hopefully there will be some compromises to be had. But let's move on to some other stuff in the news today. Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, who many people are very angry with because of this crisis over schools being closed because of the concrete that had been used to build them, and were blaming the government for not acting sooner. She responded like this, off mic, in an interview today with ITV.
Thank you. Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
Do you feel this is a good moment, Mr. Mayor, to tell the Education Secretary she's done an effing good job?
I'd not seen that until just now. Look, I mean, for those that don't know, we had a conversation before we went on air. That's, so you can be caught out with, a hot mic, as they call it. But I think the problem is, the arrogance in relation to, thinking you should be getting a pat on the back. I spent Friday speaking to really worried parents who didn't know whether their kids are going to school on Monday, whether they had to organise childcare. My sister's a teacher, as is my sister-in-law. They had no idea whether their schools are affected. I was also an MP in 2010 lobbying Michael Gove and the government, saying, for goodness sake, please don't cut the programme you're going to cut, the Building Schools for Future programme that Ed Balls had announced. And, austerity has consequences. And I think Gillian Keegan needs to understand children are caught in the crossfire because of government cuts for the last 13 years. And rather than asking for a pat on the back, she needs to be working night and day to make our schools safe. And it is a problem, the fact that literally, forget our public services crumbling, literally our schools are crumbling.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought it was unbelievably arrogant and tone deaf. Let's talk about women, because she's a woman. What is a woman, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I asked that question knowing full well that people may be watching this who may have gender dysphoria and may, have concerns in relation to this issue. So let me be quite direct in relation to this. So a woman, when it comes to biology and sex, is an adult girl. But there are some women who may have gender dysphoria, and trans women can also be women as well.
Right, so how do you feel, for example, about the issue of trans women in women's sport, which many, including me, think is grotesquely unfair?
My starting point is dignity and respect, but it's a fact. When you look at the science, there is a massive advantage in relation to some sports. If you have been through puberty, for example, as a boy/man, and then change your gender then. So I think it's right that the sporting authorities look at the science, look at the evidence, because it's a massive advantage.
So would you ban trans women and have them compete in either their own category or perhaps against their biological sex?
I think it depends on sport. I'll give you an example. I suspect it may not impact performance in relation to darts or snooker. It clearly would in relation to the 100 metres. So I think each sporting authority has got to start from the basis of dignity and respect and protecting trans people, but then realise that in some sports there's clearly a massive advantage in relation to biology.
I mean, it's become bizarrely a hot issue, this. Many people tripping up over trying to categorise what a woman is. You've defined what a woman is, which is good to see. Keir Starmer said that 99.9%, I think he's up to now, of women don't have penises. What percentage do you think it is?
I'm not going to apply a percentage. What I do know, Piers, is...
Well, you know why I'm asking? Because most women watching would say actually 100% of women don't have penises.
No, sure. Look, I was speaking to people who work in the domestic violence sector a couple of weeks ago, and trans women, are on the receiving end of domestic violence, domestic abuse.
Yeah,
By the way,
but you see, I've heard people try and distract the conversation like this. The thing is,
point being,
I don't dispute that, and I absolutely, to be clear, I want trans people to be treated with humanity, with respect, and with fairness and equality.
I know you do.
My issue comes where trans rights start to subjugate women's rights, and I think that's what the problem is.
Now, what I was going to say, Piers, forgive me, is that, and those trans women who are at the receiving end of domestic violence, may have had a penis is the point I was going to make. But similarly, I know there are some places that are protected for single-sex brackets biology. So these are complicated issues, and that's why I don't want to be flippant.
It's not. It's really. It's actually not that complicated, is it? I mean, I think if you start from a position there are men and women, and then there are trans women and trans men. If you just articulate it like that, there's not a problem. It gets complicated when people try and pretend that biological males are women. They're not.
I think there's biology and then there's gender, isn't there? And the point I was trying to get across is that that I'm aware it's very difficult if you're somebody who's trans. You're going through this, and so what I'm trying to do is be sensitive to that, but recognising, as you've asked me to do, of some of the challenges when it comes to sports, particularly those sports where your sex does matter when it comes to performance.
At City Hall, you have a weird series of rules that have been laid down. You don't like gender-specific phrases like ladies and gentlemen to be used because it may exclude non-binary people. What if somebody wants to be called a lady or a gentleman? British Airways have done this too, and I'm like, hang on, when I get on a plane, I actually quite like to be called a gentleman. Where are my rights to still be called a gentleman?
Well, I'm not sure about that, about that being City Hall rule. What I can tell you...
What, my self-categorisation, anyway?
Well, no, I love days when I'm called a gentleman, but I think what it may be is, somebody may have said friends or people or Londoners, I don't know. But no, nothing is banned, often when people are doing speeches that I've been present for in City Hall, they've said, welcome ladies and gentlemen and stuff. So I'm not sure about any words being banned, Piers, and if there hasn't...
it's an advisory. It says, for example, migrants shouldn't be called illegal, even if they're illegal migrants. They should be called insecure immigration status people or undocumented. But frankly, if they're an illegal...
I can deal with that.
Yeah, but if they're an illegal migrant, they're an illegal migrant. Why do you care what the phraseology is?
Let me deal with that. So when you're an asylum seeker coming to the UK, there are now no safe routes to come to the UK. And what the government has done is outlawed, made it a criminal offence to come to the UK for asylum seekers. So many asylum seekers who come to the UK may be defined as illegal migrants because of the government passing this law, which isn't law in other countries, but they are asylum seekers who go on to become refugees, many of them Great Britons, once they've secured their status. I think that's what it may be referring to.
My general view about this, I guess, is that there seems to be a lot of energy going on. At government level, in the NHS, we've seen it with, you can't say mothers, you have to say birthing parents, all this kind of thing. And I don't like it. I don't really understand it. I don't know why all language has to be changed just because there is a minority of people who may or may not be offended by not being included in every terminology. Ultimately, a mum wants to be called a mum. A dad wants to be called a dad, a man wants to be called a man, a woman wants to be called a woman, a boy, a kid, a girl, a girl. Why do we have to have all this gender-neutral language brought in, which stops all those words being used in officialdom? Why can't we just keep it the way it was? And if people don't like it, well, OK, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get everything you want in life.
Yeah, I suspect some of the reasons for people being cognizant about the consequences of language is how it's received. And so I grew up at a time where it was common for people like me to be called the P word, or for black people to be called the N word, or my Jewish friends to be called the Y word. And we now accept, we used to call it then, people would criticise that, call it politically correct. But that political correctness led to, me feeling a safe space to go out and about, literally a safe space. But also because Londoners are so brilliant, they've elected someone like me, an ethnic minority and a religious minority, to be their mayor. So this inclusivity does lead to progress in many, many ways. But I accept sometimes it can be ridiculous. I was told recently that somebody can't use the word blackboard because that may be offensive to black people.
Stupid,
I've never met a black person. I've never met a black person offended by the word blackboard.
Of course not. They're offended by people thinking they'd be offended.
As a Muslim, no, but also as a Muslim, I regularly send Christmas cards. In fact, I used to have a Christmas card competition every year as a Member of Parliament. So I don't say season's greetings. I say Happy Christmas. So often I think it's...
You've actually sent me a Christmas card in the past.
There you go. There you go.
Although I noticed
even after you're beastly towards me.
Couple of quick ones before I let you go. The American presidential election. I've got Vivek Ramaswamy on, who's the rising star of the Republican Party. Did very well in the debate last week. He's on the show tonight. What's your view of him?
Well, let me tell your viewers an exclusive, which I never told you, Piers, but you were there, so you'll know this. In 2016, when I was a baby mayor, you interviewed me with Susanna Reid on your morning breakfast programme, and off air I said to you, what do you think about the Republican primaries and this guy Trump running? And you said to me off air, Trump's going to win. And everyone was saying there's no chance Trump was going to win. So I had a question for you afterwards, off air maybe, or on air, who do you think is going to win? But I think he's fascinating, this guy. I mean, anybody who, when you get to our age, Piers, wants to rap Eminem, deserves, kudos for doing so. The fact that Eminem may not like it is his point of view. But
are you partial to a bit of rap yourself or not?
No, man. Although you boys were singing Vanilla Ice on
we
Sunday.
Were. Rice, Baby at the Arsenal yesterday.
But no, listen, I'm not. My daughters would be mortified. I'm forbidden to go on Strictly and forbidden to dance in public. But this guy, listen, I may not agree with what he's saying, but the good thing about him, he appears authentic, and he's not a politician. I know Trump wasn't a politician, but sometimes you've got to shake things up in relation to saying, calling a spade, being challenging and so forth. So, being frank, you won't be surprised to know. Don't agree with his politics, but I think it's right and proper that during a primary, during a nomination process, you really do test all the candidates. And you remember how the wheels came off some of the Republican favourites in 2016 when Trump entered the race. And I bet you, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to upset quite a few of the established candidates. That's
I'm sure he will. But of course, by far the front runner in the Republican race remains Donald Trump. You and he have got a pretty checkered history, to put it mildly. You allowed a big balloon of him as a baby to fly over Westminster when he came into town. He's been pretty scathing about you. How would you feel if he is re-elected President of the United States?
Just to give full context, I also allowed a balloon of me with a bikini to fly in London
which was equally unedifying, I have to say.
So it could have been worse. It could have been me in person with a bikini. What sauce for the goose? But can I say this? This is my problem with Trump. I've got a number of problems with President Trump, and you and I have discussed this in the past, is how I felt when he said some of the things about the religion that I follow, how my family felt in America, proud Americans, proud Muslims, about what he said, about women I know, how they felt when he was elected. But you will have seen what happened on Capitol Hill, listen, there's losing with dignity, being magnanimous in defeat. And what happened at Capitol Hill, for those who were agnostic or not sure, should be the final straw in relation to his fitness for office. This is America, for goodness sake. You and I are big fans of West Wing. We look to America as a beacon for democracy, human rights, separation of powers, so forth, the checks and balances. And I think sometimes, yes, challenge is good, debate is good, but sometimes people are not fit for office. And I frankly don't think, and I don't want to cause offence to your American viewers and stuff, I do not think Donald Trump is fit to be the president of that great country.
I mean, should somebody who's facing nearly 100 criminal charges, just on basic principle, should they be allowed to be a candidate for president? As the Constitution stands at the moment, he is allowed to be. He could be president and be in prison.
Can I say, one of the wonderful things and the joys of America is due process. And I think it's right that Donald Trump has his day or days in court. I think there is a presumption of innocence. There's a separate discussion about whether somebody who's presumed innocent should be barred from office. I think as a former human rights lawyer, that may be unfair. You're charged with an offence, not found guilty. He later on may be acquitted. I think there's a separate discussion about that.
But if he was convicted, for argument's sake, if Trump was convicted of a criminal offence before the election, what would your position be then?
Well, surely then you'd expect there to be provision where he's not allowed to stand with a conviction, particularly if it's a conviction to do with what happened on Capitol Hill, particularly if it's to do with a conviction in relation to dishonesty and so forth. Look, I used to be a lawyer, Piers. If you've got even a minor conviction for dishonesty, the Law Society doesn't allow you to be a lawyer, right? Because you've got client money and so forth, and so forth. And so I think the President of the United States is not arguably, it probably is, definitely is, the most powerful person in the world. The idea somebody with a conviction can be leader of the country beggars belief. But also, let me see the problem. What message does that send to people across the great country of America and around the globe in relation to no consequences for your action? And one of the great things about justice is its ability to deter others. What message does it send to a future president in relation to how they can behave or not behave, if notwithstanding all the things I've said, if Capitol Hill isn't in itself a bar from being a future president? And by the way, one of the great things about America, and we've got to recognise this, is that By the way, America did correct itself in relation to not only the various charges you're talking about, but also the American people deciding to, boot Trump out of office and bring in President Biden. So, good countries with separation of powers, with good constitutions, with a democracy, in the end, right does overcome wrong. And I genuinely, think that, Donald Trump is not a fit person to be president of that great country.
And for different reasons, given the state of him right now, do you feel comfortable if Joe Biden was to serve another 4 years as president, given how often he currently falls over in public and gets his words wrong and looks like he doesn't know what day it is?
Well, look, I want to tell you, the reputation of America, the moment after President Biden was elected was hugely enhanced in relation to how they're perceived. You've seen, you know better than I do, some of the legislation is passed. The Inflation Reduction Act is leading to a stimulus.
Yeah, I'm talking more about his own lack of apparent physical stimulus, that he just doesn't seem physically or mentally up to the task of being president, the most powerful job in the world. And there's still another year and a half to the election. And then if he was to win, another 4 years in office. I don't think any rational person looks at Joe Biden at the moment and thinks that would be a good thing for the free world.
I'm certainly not on top of, President Biden's medical condition. But I tell you this, there are some days when I see our Prime Minister performing where I think he's not up to the job either.
Oh, Rishi Sunak?
I mean, some of the decisions he makes, come on, he should have sacked Gillian Keegan. You showed me that video. If I was Sunak now and you showed me that video of Gillian Keegan, I'd be demanding she'd be kicked out.
Would you?
His decision to... Yeah, he was the Chancellor. He was the Chancellor who decided as Chancellor to reject the advice of the Education Secretary and cut the schools budget by a half that was going into repairing the schools and spent half that budget instead on an ideological free schools project. And so, and those chicks coming home to roost.
Final question, Mr. Mayor. I know you've been very generous with your time, but recent studies showed that there have been more than 300,000 racist messages about you since you became mayor in 2016, and that number's increased exponentially since the ULEZ story has played out. And you've said that you've had PTSD from some of this abuse, this racist abuse you've been suffering. We had the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins, banned from Twitter, now called X, after writing racist and threatening comments about you, referencing the fact you're a Muslim mayor and saying that you should be killed. Someone should kill him. How did you feel when you read that from such a high-profile person?
I want to say it beggars belief. Nothing surprises me anymore. It's more the impact of my daughters. You're on the receiving end of some of this stuff as well, and so as a dad, you worry about your kids, right? Or no matter how old they are. And as my daughter seeing that upset me the most. My wife's an adult. She's seeing some of the stuff, but also when you say this stuff, even though you might say you don't mean it, how do you know how somebody else is going to react to it in relation to the phenomenon of grooming, being radicalised, incitement? And so listen, I'm up for robust debate. I think it's really important in democracy. People should be acting in a way that make their views clear, but it should be lawful, peaceful and safe. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, I'm like you, I support the ends in relation to Just Oil and Extinction Rebellion. I don't support some of their tactics because they're not lawful, safe and peaceful, but this goes on the other side of that because you're inciting others to not just commit a criminal offence, but to kill me. I mean, I was somebody who was close friends with, Joe Cox,
right,
who was murdered in 2016. I mean, we were close. And so, and from the work you do, people across the globe who are often the receiving end when people act on these sorts of messages. And listen, you've challenged me during this interview, and you will confirm nothing was off bounds in relation to the challenge. Right. That's the joy of a democracy.
Yeah, I agree.
But inciting people to commit criminal offences, commit criminal damage, I think, come on. I mean, say if somebody did behave in a way that, brings to life what people like that are saying, and I'm at the receiving end, or say you're creating an environment where my ethnicity and my religion is a relevant issue. And I just think, we live in a multicultural, multiracial society. The great thing about our country and our city is There is no ceiling upon which you can't go through. Forget the glass ceiling being smashed. It was decimated ages ago. And you're just doing back some of the progress make. And I'd implore people, yes, be critical of me, sign petitions, go on demos. You know, don't vote for me if you don't want to vote for me and stuff. But there's got to be a line, you know, beyond which you shouldn't cross.
No, I completely agree with you. It's disgusting. Mullins has apologised since then. He's been taken off Twitter, which is good. Good to see Elon Musk's Twitter, X as it now is, taking action to take him off for that, because that's unacceptable. And I'm glad he has apologised for it. Just want to leave on a positive note, Mr. Mayor. You've just committed £135 million of funding, meaning that 287,000 more state primary school children in London will get free school meals from this week. That is a great thing to do, and I congratulate you on it.
Thanks, Piers. I was somebody who had the benefit of free school meals. It was means tested when I was young. It gave my parents breathing space. It was a lifeline to them in relation to knowing their kids would eat a decent meal during the course of the day. But I still remember now, I don't remember what I ate. I don't remember, you know, my parents feeling relieved. But I remember the embarrassment, Piers, because it was means tested. And so I was in a different queue to get my token. I'd eat separately from my mates because I was receiving free school meals. And so the good news about this policy, which children are receiving benefits from today, is children getting nutritious meals, at least a better attainment in the classroom, greater productivity in schools, parents being relieved, but also it means there's no stigma and no shame. And I'm incredibly proud we're making history. The first time in that great city's history, every child in primary school will have a decent nutritional meal.
That's great. We've got a picture, I think, of you and your brothers, actually, which you put out. Look at you, all sweet,
I'm the good-looking one.
Face.
I'm the good-looking one in the centre.
I'm sure that, like my brothers, they might take issue with that, but I think it's great. And finally, Arsenal hammered Manchester United yesterday. Are we now all agreed that North London is red?
So can I share with your viewers exclusively that there are 6 clubs in the Premier League in London. And so as all good South Londoners, I support Liverpool. And I'm looking forward to your boys getting spanked by our boys when you come to Anfield, like you always do, Piers. But on a serious note, what we agree on is the joy in United getting beaten the way they were beaten.
I think we have reached a point of total agreement on that.
If you saw his interview afterwards, oh my God. I mean, it was just great to watch. It was a joy to watch.
It was a joy to watch. Mr. Mayor, it's good to have you on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Don't leave us alone next time.
I promise I won't.
People want to hear your views. You're a very powerful figure in this country. You run our great capital city, and it's good to have a robust exchange with you over a number of issues. Thank you for joining me.
Stay well. Take care, mate.